Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. It's so nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. It's my honor. I am so excited to talk to you. I've learned so much about myself listening to you. And so thank you. And of course, when people found out that I was going to have you on, they're like, oh, I've always been wondering this.
Well, some things I can answer, and some things would be questions that are more for Bashar. So we'll
For
see
Bashar.
how it goes.
Yeah. A lot of listeners of Sense of Soul are big followers of yours and Bashar's.
Well, I
So,
appreciate that.
yeah.
So,
It's an honor. But just to start off, I would love to know just where you're from and how you grew up. That's a question that I ask a lot of my guests. Like,
okay.
did you have a spiritual background, or were you coming out of the womb talking with Bashar in the baby carriage?
Not that I know of, but who knows? I was born in Canada. My parents brought me to LA when I was just a baby, 1.5 years old. I've always drawn, I've always been artistic ever since I could pick up a pencil. And so I spent a lot of time just in kind of my own reality, my own world, doing all sorts of artwork and things like that for most of my life. I do remember certain things that, in retrospect, looking back at it, were definitely moments where I could see that I was sort of being prepped for this later on in life. Certain things happen, certain experiences with energy and visual things happening, and also just building up a vocabulary. So Bashar would have access to the number of words necessary for him to deliver his information. Because my parents told me that I was reading at a year and a half, and I don't mean kids' books, I mean magazines. So
Wow.
I just instantly understood the whole thing about the English language. And that was always an easy subject for me in school. I couldn't understand why other people didn't understand the rules of English. It just seemed natural to me. So there are other things that made me realize, like I said, in retrospect, that I was kind of being prepped for this. And then, of course, I had my UFO sightings in 1973 that got me to start really researching all this kind of stuff and propelled me forward to be ready to do the channeling that I had obviously agreed to do before this life. So one thing kind of led to another. I really like the idea of sharing and teaching and bringing through information that helps people.
Yeah.
And of course, it's helped me a lot in terms of balancing out my own energy, letting me let go of things that I don't need anymore, belief systems that don't work, that are not as positive as they could be. So it's radically, of course, radically changed my life.
I used to always call on like your typical archangels and this and that. And I think mainly because it was comfortable, because it was related to the religion that was deeply rooted in my DNA.
Right.
So as I came out of that and over the past 3 years through my journey, I've been saying more that I believe it's been my higher self that has been leading me.
I mean, higher self is your soul, basically.
Yeah.
And the portion of it or the location of it still in spirit guiding you as a physical being is basically how we structure ourselves to have a physical reality experience. The non-physical part of ourselves acts as something that has a broader perspective that can see from the mountaintop, where we're down as physical beings, we're down in the valley. And so we need its guidance to be able to navigate our way through that valley, which is physical reality. But yeah, there's always messages coming through from the higher mind, most of which are from in energy form. And that's what Bashar says is we experience the messages of our higher mind as the sensation of passion and love and creativity and connection and attraction. Following passion, following excitement is the way that we respond to the higher mind, saying, I heard you. You're saying that this opportunity that contains all of this excitement for me is my next step. That's why it's so exciting. So following that is what allows us to receive the guidance of the higher mind. Acting on it is what allows us to answer the higher mind and say, I heard you and I'm willing to believe you're guiding me, and therefore I will take your guidance and I will act on this. So that's what really solidifies and strengthens the relationship between the physical and the higher mind, is the willingness to take action on the things the higher mind is guiding you in life, which comes in the form of passion.
Hmm. I would even say that I was also crediting that part of me for the synchronicities that I was seeing everywhere.
Well, yeah, because when you do expand your consciousness, when you're willing to go with that flow, the organizing principle of synchronicity is one of the things that becomes more apparent because
Mm.
everything is synchronicity. Everything is an orchestration. There are no accidents. It's just that you, with an expanded consciousness, start to be able to see the interconnectedness of all things, and therefore you are more aware of synchronicity in your life because it's always there. You just become more aware of it and you see it more obviously, and it becomes more magical in a sense. It becomes bigger. It becomes more profound in terms of when you experience that kind of interconnectivity to all things that are necessary and relevant for you.
What was your first encounter with the entity, Bashar?
Well, aside from whatever may have happened earlier before I started channeling, like I said, there were certain events that happened in my childhood, and the UFO sighting was, in a sense, an encounter with Bashar. But in terms of knowing that, in terms of knowing who he was, 10 years after the UFO sighting, I was in a channeling class because I was researching what channeling was by that time. I wanted to understand how something like channeling could be taught because the books I had read, like the Seth material and so on and so forth, you sort of just got the impression that channeling was something that just sort of happened to someone. It wasn't anything you could prep for. It wasn't anything you could be taught. But in the class, it was given by an entity through a channel, and it was a series of guided meditations and other kinds of energy exercises. And about halfway through the course, about 6 weeks into a 12-week course, we were in a guided meditation being guided by the entity coming through the channel. And all of a sudden, it was like somebody just downloaded something in my head. I instantly had the understanding of who Bashar was. I saw an image of him. I had made an agreement in this life to do this with him. I understood the UFO had been shown to me on purpose to get me to start doing the research. And the
Mhm.
basic message that was there was, now you understand that it's time to begin this if this is still something you want to do. It was given to me as a choice. All of this was there in a split second in my mind. And I didn't know what was happening. I thought, okay, I'm hallucinating. This is a side effect of the meditation, something weird like that. But at that moment that this was happening, I wasn't talking, I wasn't telling anyone what I was experiencing. The entity coming through the channel stopped talking to the class and turned right to me and said, "There's an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin." And at the same moment, because that startled me, and I happened to glance around at the rest of the class, and a woman behind me somehow had picked up on the image of Bashar I saw in my head, and she was actually sketching his face on a piece of paper. So I knew that with what the entity had said and the fact that she was sketching Bashar's face, I knew that there were two outside validations for me that this wasn't just happening in my own head. There was something real going on here.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I don't know where this is going to lead, but I'm going to continue to practice this and see what happens. So I did, and I made enough progress in that class that the teacher asked me to actually co-channel the next class with him. And it was in that class that a woman came eventually and said she wanted to do a doctoral thesis paper on the connection between psychology and channeling, and she needed subjects. So I became one of her subjects. I would go to her house, I would channel for her friends. She would take her notes and write her paper. Well, the first week, like I said, it was like 5 friends. Word started to spread. The next week was 10 friends, then 15 friends, then 20 friends. So we had to start doing it twice a week to accommodate everyone. Then we had to start renting halls to accommodate everyone. Then we had to start doing it on bigger and bigger venues. And eventually people started inviting me to different cities, different countries. And here I am 40 years later, and I'm still doing this. So,
Unbelievable. Were
yeah.
you just like Where's this wisdom coming from?
I understood exactly who Bashar was and what he was doing. So I understood that this was a telepathic connection, that
Mhm.
when I go into the altered state, I'm going into gamma, as you saw in the documentary we made,
Mhm.
First Contact, and that allows my brain to connect to his frequency as he changes his brain waves to connect to my frequency. We meet somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
and we go into lockstep, and it becomes like two tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency. And my brain then starts acting as a translation device for the thoughts that he is having. So it makes my brain act literally kind of like a telephone where he's thinking this, my brain gets the download, it's all there. The answer to any question that anyone asks is all there instantly, but it takes a while for my brain to unspool it into language. So I'm just kind of in this altered state that's kind of like a very dynamic daydream state. I know there's something
Okay.
going on because what I'm experiencing is a direct flow of his energy. And it's so much more overwhelming than the conversation out here that I can't really
Yeah.
pay attention to that. It's if you're having a really strong daydream and somebody walks in the room and they have to call your name like 3 times before you even know somebody's
Yeah.
coming.
Hey.
It's kind of like
Yes.
that. Yeah. So you
My
feel
kids are like, Mom, Mom.
mom. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's kind of like that. And I just, at this point, at 40 years later, I don't have to do much to get into that state. I can fall
Mhm.
into it pretty easily.
Yeah.
But I understand we make arrangements to do the sessions that we do, and he's available because time for him is not what it is for us. So it doesn't really matter when we decide to do it. He'll usually be there unless for some reason he feels that it's just not appropriate for other reasons. And on very rare occasions, he'll say, no, not yet. But
Mhm.
that's almost never happened.
So I've heard you say before, is your future self?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because from his point of view, everything exists at the same time. So
Okay.
it's kind
Yeah.
of in a way more accurate to say that he exists in a parallel reality. We kind of
Okay.
relate to that parallel reality as if it's the future, but his
Okay.
everything exists at the same time from his point of view. But we relate to him as the future because of the advancement of his society, because of the things that he shares with us. So it's one way of looking at his reality, but parallel reality is probably a little more accurate than saying he's from the future.
But he's part of you and you are part of him.
In a manner of speaking, yes. Again, another perspective is you could say we're connected to the same oversoul in two different time frames or two different realities.
Okay. That makes
So
sense. Okay.
in that sense, you could say, yeah, we're connected in that way, but we are each an autonomous soul. We're each an autonomous being. Yeah.
Okay. And you're each having your own
Of
experiences.
course. I once described
Okay.
this almost how a ladder has rungs that go between the two sides, right? Well, it's like he has rungs that are his own. I have rungs that are my own.
Okay.
And one rung connects all the way across. And that's this connection here. That's this
Oh,
channel. So he has his own history, his own reality, his own past lives, his own future lives. But I'm one of his past lives. He's one of my future lives. That's where the rung on the
wow.
ladder connects all the way across. But again, all those rungs on the ladder exist all at once. It,
Okay. So does everyone have that, or is this kind of unique
no,
to you and
everyone
Bashar?
has that. Everyone has that. They don't necessarily have a life path that requires them to express it in this way.
I got you.
Everyone is
Okay.
always
This
tapping
one, yeah.
in. Yeah, everyone's always tapping into connections they have with spirit, with ETs, with extra dimensionals and parallel reality versions of themselves, and are getting downloads all the time. They may not know where the information or inspiration or ideas are coming from.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean we don't have our own, because other realities are tapping into us to get inspiration and ideas from us in our experiences too.
Oh,
So
okay.
it goes like this, but not everyone knows where that's coming from. Unique
Y-
thing in the sense that I know exactly where this is coming from.
Yeah. But you are trying to help people connect with that part of themselves as part
Oh,
of the
absolutely. Because see, everyone
passion.
everyone channels when they're doing what they love to do. They go into the
Mhm.
channel state. which, as you saw in the documentary, we describe as the gamma state in the brain, which is between 40 and 100 cycles per second in the brain. So when you're doing what you love, when you're not paying attention to the passage of time, when you're in the zone, as people say, you
Mhm.
are in a channeling state. So it just depends on what you do with it. This is one thing that can
Right.
be done with it, but it's not what everyone needs to do. But anything like that, psychic functioning, automatic writing, tarot card reading,
Mhm.
anything like that, that triggers your ability to expand yourself, make bigger associations, even playing sports, things like that, where again, you're in that
Mhm.
zone, you're not thinking, you're just doing, and it's
Right.
all just coming very smoothly. An actor who becomes the part, a singer who is lost in the song, everyone goes into that channeling state when they follow their passion, when they do what they love to do. So
Yeah.
we all have it, yeah.
Has anyone else ever tried to come in before?
Well,
And you're like, wait a minute.
Bashar has facilitated a couple of other entities from time to time. He's 99% of the time, but there have been reasons now and then for other entities to sort of come through and say something, and he usually facilitates that. So yeah, there'll be a distinct switch in the personality, the type of information, the delivery of information when it's a different entity. But I would
Okay.
say that's only happened out of all the years I've been doing it. It's probably only happened enough times I can fit on both hands, if that.
Okay. Bashar's freaking hilarious. I mean, he is comical. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
his dry humor.
yeah. Why shouldn't they have humor?
How old is he?
The average lifespan of their people is about 300 years. Some are much older. But here's the thing, his consciousness and the consciousness of his people in his civilization is so flexible, even during a single conversation with him, depending on what it is he needs to tap into to answer a question. You might at one point in the conversation be talking to his 50-year-old self. At another point in the conversation, you might be talking
Oh.
to his 150-year-old self. You won't necessarily know the difference, but he's described that his consciousness will go up and down his timeline to acquire or access whatever
My
information
God.
the question spurs him to access. So you never know exactly how old is he when you're talking to him because it might fluctuate.
I feel like I'm like that. Let me check in with my crone self. So is this why he always says like we or our?
That's part of it, but he is telepathically connected to many other beings in his society and
Okay.
others who are interested in sort of, let's just say, eavesdropping into the conversation for their own reasons. So sometimes, yeah, the we is usually representative of the fact that it's more than him just listening in.
So his race, I would say, is it his race, the as a sunny?
Well, the planet is Sasani. The race is Sasani. They are the Sasani people. Yeah.
And have they ever been occupying Earth before?
He has said that there have, on rare occasions in the past, had certain individual members of his society visit Earth. Now, he's told a story that about 1,000 years ago, I found this out, and it really shocked me to find this out. There is a Middle Eastern civilization, or was a Middle Eastern civilization called the Sasani. But what he said is the way, and I did the research on this. The reason that group of people were called Sasani is because, let's see, how did this go? The person that established that culture named the culture after, I think, his grandfather, Sasan. And his grandfather was named Sasan after what they considered to be a godlike entity. So Bashar said, yes, it was one of our people, the person who experienced that ET extraterrestrial being didn't understand that Sasan was the name of our race. He thought it was the name of the being. And
Okay.
therefore he was given the name Sasan after what they thought was the name of the entity. And that became named the Sasani culture. So he
Wow.
said, we're actually connected to that. We're responsible for that name coming about because people don't understand that the entity that this being encountered was actually an ET. So,
So, do you have maybe that DNA within you?
well, that's why I'm half Syrian,
Yeah.
because that's that area. It's that area.
Hmm.
So, yes, I have that DNA. And
That's
that
remarkable.
that's a connection that I have. See, this is part of what Bashar does sometimes is he drops over time these breadcrumbs.
Hmm.
And I have my own personal puzzle to put together and
Hmm.
it starts making me understand that I'm connected to him in more than one way. Because the first time that I encountered the name of the Sasani culture on our planet, I was going through, remember there, I don't know if there still is, there used to be this thing called the museum store, which was a store that had replicas of what was in the Metropolitan Museum of History or something like that. It had
Okay.
replicas of jewelry and things like that that people had discovered in archaeological digs. And
Hmm.
I looked in this one case one time, and there was this necklace, but it was really strange because it was extremely modern looking. It almost looked like each piece was made out of milled aluminum. It was very odd looking and it looked
Right?
very hyper modern. And I said, God, that's really weird. It doesn't look like it fits in ancient times. They said that this was a product of the Sasani culture.
Were
And it's
you
like the Sasani culture, what are you talking about? How did that name come on Earth after Bashar had said they're called the Sasani? So
so then you start connecting the dots.
that's what triggered it. I started doing the research and found out about this story of how the Sasani culture got its name. And it came from what they considered to be some kind of a godlike entity. So yeah.
Oh,
And Bashar said, yeah,
that's
that was a member of my society.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really, I love that. That's been my journey. All just breadcrumbs, and I learn things sometimes in my dreams,
Hmm.
synchronicity.
Right.
Sometimes you don't think it's going to be relevant at all, and then it ends up being like that missing puzzle piece.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I and so I'm writing a book about it because I don't know what else to do with it. So I think that
That's
I'm
one thing you
supposed to
can
share
do.
it.
As Bashar says, whatever it is you have to give, that's great. Give it. It's a gift. But you
Mm.
have to let people decide whether or not to take it. And what they do with it is none of your business because they have their own
Mm.
path.
Can you explain to me about this permission slip I hear you often talk about?
Basically, he's using that term to describe the idea that any technique, any tool, any ritual, any discipline, any object in physical reality is something that we gravitate to use because our belief system says, I need to do it this way in order to become more of who I am, in order to grow, in order to change, in order to have these abilities. So we're using it to give ourselves permission to be more of who we are. So
Mm.
whether you are, like I said, using sports as a permission slip, you're using a crystal as a permission slip, you're reading the tarot deck as a permission slip, it doesn't matter
Mm.
what it is. Any tool, technique, discipline, or ritual or object that we decide we need to gravitate to use, that we're interested in, we're attracted to, that allows us to
Mhm.
be more of who we are, we're giving ourselves permission to do that by the use of that object, technique, tool, discipline, or ritual, because we think that's what we need. Now, it's okay to do that from Bashar's perspective, but he's basically saying ultimately you realize you're the one making the choice to change anyhow. You are the ultimate permission slip. And eventually you don't need the tool anymore. You don't need the object anymore.
Right.
You can just connect
Yes.
in the way you need to connect in. You can just change in the way you wish to change because the permission slip has gotten you used to the idea of that frequency, that vibration. And then it becomes very natural. That's why in the beginning of when I started the channeling, I definitely used to go through a kind of a step-by-step process in a meditative state to get into the proper state. Now I don't need to do
Right.
that anymore.
You
I'm
don't need
just so
to.
used to the state that I know how to get into it in a minute. Nothing to it. But at
Yeah.
the beginning, I needed a process to understand how to do that. So
Yeah. I think that I never reflected on that before, but yeah, some of those early on tools that I don't use anymore because they just became part of like
right.
muscle memory in some way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's like he said, you practice just like trying to play the piano. You practice, and then it just starts flowing through you. It's not like you have to do anything in particular. You just sit down and you play.
I'm a recovering Catholic,
Me too.
and
Yeah, I was the whole ball of wax. I was an altar boy. I was a choir boy. Yeah, I still remember the original Latin from the Mass.
when I picked up a Bible and I started to read ancient text, including the Bible, I really was reading it with new eyes. And one of the first things I really got stuck on was that the angels came down and mated with Adam's daughters. And reading on further, I'm like, holy crap, wait a minute. Are angels aliens?
Angels are angels. ETs are ETs, but a lot of ETs were mistaken for angels. The ones that were actually creating progeny with humans are ETs, but our belief system at the time is that these beings were so godlike,
Hmm.
so many abilities beyond humanity at that time that we considered them to be angels. So
Hmm.
angels are literally a different kind of a thing, different level of consciousness. But I think that what those ancient texts are actually referring to are encounters with ETs.
And what about all the prophets?
A lot of the early prophets really were nothing more than psychics and channels and mediums who accessed
Yeah.
information and shared information. Now we don't theoretically, hopefully, burn them at the stake anymore, but it's something that humanity has always been able to do because we have that DNA. We have those genes that allow us to tap into those things. And now and then you get people in the past that simply had that ability and they were just expressing what they could do. So, it was natural.
Do you feel like your ancestors, your grandparents, your mom and dad, I mean, did they have a little bit of this in them
Not that
as
I
well?
know of. I don't know that much about my family. My dad was able to do something that I find astonishing, but the thing of it is he didn't really treat it that way. I was talking with a friend
Mhm.
one day just about remembering my dreams, and my dad happened to overhear the conversation. And he said, "Oh, I don't dream." And I said, "Well, Dad, you mean you don't remember your dreams? Because everyone dreams and you just don't remember." And he said, "No, I don't dream." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" Because he said, "Well, because when I go to sleep, I
Yeah.
out of my body, I turn over and I watch myself sleep." And I said, "What?" I said, "You're astral projecting,
Wow.
watching your body while it sleeps?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't you go somewhere?" He said, "Where would I go?" So, I mean, it's just, don't you understand?
Wow.
There are people that would give their right arm to be able to astral project like that. He said, "I thought everyone did it. I thought that's how you slept." So, you
Oh
know,
my gosh.
yeah,
So he didn't use his
he didn't
gift.
know that it could be used that way. He just thought this is what
Right.
happens to everyone when they go to sleep. So there's those
Right.
things, but
Yeah.
I never had a chance to actually meet my grandparents or anything like that because again, my parents brought me down here out of Canada when I was a baby,
Yeah.
and all the family stayed back in Canada. So I don't really
Sure.
know exactly what my history is or what my relatives had the ability to do in that sense.
Mhm. People are saying we just moved into the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, it's a representation of the idea of an awakening of our consciousness, an expansion of our consciousness, and awareness that we're creating our reality, and awareness that we're connected to, that we are spirit, we're connected to source.
Hmm.
So it's all those things that go with the idea of an enlightenment age, an awakening age, a
Hmm.
remembering age of who we really are, what we really are. We're not just these physical beings, we're something more. So to me, that's what the whole age of Aquarius is all about. And we've been going into it for quite some time now. People say, when are we going to ascend? We are already ascending. Bashar has said
Hmm.
something to the effect of, look, he said, if a person from 300 years ago was able to actually come to the present and see you, he said, to him, you would look like you were glowing with light. You just don't
Oh.
know because you're used to it. You don't
Mm.
see it, but your frequency is so much higher. They would see it because they're not at that frequency. But those people in this day and age who are exploring their consciousness, connecting to spirit more strongly, more consciously, said you're
Hmm.
already raising your vibration by doing that. And that's why Bashar talks so much about following and acting on your passion because one of the main things that happens when you do is your frequency goes up. And when your frequency
Mhm.
goes up, you become a better receiver of higher frequency information. You literally become like a better antenna for receiving inspiration and energy and experience from other levels. So that's what's already happening. It's not just, well, there's going to be a day and boom, it's just there. We're already progressing that way. It's a process that we're going through. So it's already happening.
So you've been doing this for 40 years.
Yes.
So when you look back at 40 years and your crowds and the amount of people that were able to receive
Hmm.
what Bashar was trying to teach,
Hmm.
are you seeing a huge amount of people awakening today?
More and more. And in fact, I think I was just actually discussing this with my business partner. We've recently seen an uptick in that. More and more people know who Bashar is. More and more
Mhm.
people are following the general ideas he talks about and other beings and entities that come through channels and what have you. So we have really experienced an uptick in people's awareness of this kind of information just literally within the last couple of years. So I do feel an acceleration is happening here. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, in the younger generations, I have kids from 26 to 11. I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, not only are they more empathetic, more intuitive, but they care about humanity. They care about the earth.
Yeah, and what Bashar has said about new generations that have been coming in now for a little while, he said, you have to understand they're not just a new generation. They're a different species now. They're connecting to different things. So it is the beginning of an evolutionary path for humanity, and connecting to ETs and your own higher self has a lot to do with propelling us into that future.
Yeah. I think we're breaking out of the box. It's like the systems are falling.
Yes.
We are coming into, it seems like the end and the beginning.
Yes, it is the end of the beginning. That's why I think we're seeing so much chaos in the world, because we're now
Yeah.
like having to get everything out on the table and going, what kind of a reality do you really want? Here's all the choices: positive, negative, neutral. And it's accelerating because as you expand your consciousness, you actually are more aware of the negativity as well as the positivity because you're seeing more of existence. So but just because we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot more of that doesn't mean that we have to be affected by it. As Bashar says, this is what he calls kind of the splitting of the prism. So it's like we're on different train tracks, leaving the station in different directions. We can still see that there are people that might be making choices that are not vibrationally compatible with what we would prefer. We
Mhm.
can still see all the different choices. We can see them, they can see us. But after a while, when the trains really start moving away from the station, they start diverging off like this in different directions. And eventually, it's going to be more challenging to go from one train, one track to another, because the
Right.
trains
Okay.
will be so far apart that you won't even necessarily know ultimately that there's another train to shift to.
Mhm.
So eventually, in the years to come, what he said is, as you do that, as you make more choices that are more representative of the kind of version of Earth that you prefer, ultimately that's all you will eventually experience. You will no longer
Mhm.
experience the people that are on a vibratory level that is too different from your own. You will
Yeah.
only experience those that have made similar choices to be on the same train. Now, that's not happening yet. This
Right.
is still the time when you can still see the other trains and you can still decide to change the tracks. But eventually, the trains are getting farther and farther apart.
Which is why I think it's so important. You have this interstellar alliance. Is that what it's called? The social experiment?
It's something new from Bashar that he's starting now because he's saying, from his point of view, the last 40 years of sharing information has all been prep.
Okay.
And now that it's ended the 40-year cycle, because for him, this 40 years is the cycle of cultural change in humanity. That's the tick of our cultural clock. So after 40 years, he's now doing something new. He's calling it the Interstellar Alliance Social Experiment. And he is now suggesting on a month-to-month basis different kinds of actions, different suggestions for different kinds of steps and actions that we can take that will actually, if we incorporate them, and he's giving us the choice, it's not being forced on us,
Mhm.
if we incorporate these steps into our lives and build on them. In other words, step one, you do the first month. Step two, he gives you the second month, but you still keep doing step one. In month three, he'll give you step three, but you still keep doing step two and step one. So you
Okay.
keep building up on this. And this is designed to allow our frequencies to start matching more closely the vibration of the interstellar alliance that he belongs to, and the vibration starts matching more closely to the idea of open contact with ETs. So the degree to which, again, it's our choice. You don't have to do these steps, or you can do some of them and not all of them. But he's saying the amount that you do will determine the amount of the frequency and how close it is to the vibration of open contact and the vibration of the interstellar alliance. So he is now literally
Right.
giving us physical things we can do that will literally shift our frequency if we want that kind of contact to accelerate us in that direction. So this is a very different kind of delivery that he's doing now, and we're really excited about it.
So we all might be able to have a Bashar.
Well, yeah, we have our own connections to ETs of various types. Some are connected to hybrids like Bashar's people. Some are connected to Sirius, some what have you. But
Right.
we'll attract more globally what it is that will help us the most in experiencing open contact with different kinds of ETs. Now, he also says, remember that you never actually change the world you're on. You're always shifting to different versions of Earth, literally billions of times a second, whether you know it or not. And it's the idea of following his formula and following these steps that acts as the navigational tool that changes your frequency and propels you in the direction of the versions of Earth that are more and more like the versions we say that we prefer. But actions go along with that hand in hand. So it's by taking the actions that are representative of that kind of planet that we act as living examples to others, that they can take these kinds of actions too, and we can shift together if they want to these
Mhm.
versions of Earth that are more and more like what we would say we would love to have in terms of peace and harmony and creativity and love and enough for everyone and all this kind of stuff. But the other versions of Earth will still exist, and those that might be making vibrationally incompatible choices, negative choices, fear-based choices, they'll still experience their version of Earth because all versions exist simultaneously because time's an illusion. So they'll go in one direction. This is the train leaving the station in that direction. Other people will be on the trains leaving the station in a different direction. And eventually, no one will experience the other. We'll only experience what is similar to our frequency in the years to come. That's how Bashar's described this.
That's amazing. So far you're at like step two right now. So do you even know what they are? Or are they coming?
I have a sense of some of it, but I don't specifically know what he's going to say the steps actually are. But usually before we do, because what we do is we do a pre-record and then 2 weeks later we actually do the streaming. So in the pre-record, he'll deliver what the next steps are for that particular
Okay.
month. And then the next it'll be a month later that he'll deliver to the stuff for the next steps and so on and so forth. So yeah, step one he's delivered. Step two he has delivered, but I don't think we've streamed it yet. I think the streaming is coming up on the 23rd of this month, and that's when
Okay.
the public will receive the second step, but then he won't deliver the third step until the next month, April, and sometime in April.
Wow.
And it'll be month
It's
to month
exciting.
for an entire year. And then it'll go because
Okay.
he's calling this countdown to contact year one. So
Okay.
he has said that somewhere around the end, that's very rare for him to make predictions. So we're really kind of paying attention to this to understand what this means. Because when he makes a prediction, because it's so rare, we kind of really pay attention. Because he talks about the idea that prediction is not a prediction of the future. It's a sensing of the energy that exists at the moment the prediction is made. And if you don't change it, it will come to pass. And he's only done this a couple of times.
Wow.
The first time he ever did it that I know of was in 1998. He said that there would be a terrorist attack in New York before the end of 2001. Obviously, that came true. And
Wow.
that was reported
Okay.
in 1998. He also said that everything would change in 2016 regarding things like the election and what's happening in this country and around the world. And obviously that has happened. So the prediction he's recently made is that somewhere around the end of 2026, the beginning of 2027, somewhere in there, there
Mhm.
would be some kind of a UFO event that
Wow.
would change everything and start us in a new direction. But he's not saying why that's happening.
He
Thinks
thinks we need to prepare for this.
yes. So these steps are preparation for that and for whatever it is that's going to accelerate us in the direction of ET contact, should we decide that we are going to choose that. So that's why he's saying you don't have to follow these steps, but if you do, that's what's going to bring you closer to the vibration of contact. And so the rest is up to you, but we're giving you the path.
That's
It's
really
how far
cool.
you walk along it is up to us.
Some of the stuff that you have out there, like the principles
Mhm.
that you channeled,
Follows the formula.
beautiful.
I really appreciate what he's delivered in terms, especially in terms of the formula, his explanations of how our consciousness works, how our belief systems create our reality. I like that he gets down into the physical mechanics of it, so it's easier for people to understand. He's really giving us a toolkit. But that's what I really like about his formula and the 5 steps in it, because he's saying, look, we're distilling this down and giving this to you because it's literally like an instruction manual for how you create your reality.
Yeah.
And you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just follow the instructions, and it makes it so much
Yeah.
easier. And it does work. And that's the thing I love about it is he's given us something that actually you can actually test for yourself. So it's not like anyone has to believe that Bashar is really an ET. They can say,
Mhm.
well, maybe it's just a part of Darryl's consciousness on another level or whatever. But the thing is that when they actually use the formula, they actually get a result. They actually see that the information works, that the
Mhm.
information is real. Whether they believe that Bashar is real or not is inconsequential. And Bashar himself says
Mhm.
so. It doesn't matter whether you believe in him. It just matters that you understand that he's giving you a literal technique, a literal tool that makes a difference in how you experience your physical life. And it does work
Yeah.
because I've just gotten, I mean, it works for me. I've gotten feedback from hundreds of people that when they finally apply it precisely, it works for them
Mhm.
and it makes their
Really?
life much easier, much more joyful, much more effortless. So
Yeah.
the
It's not a
information,
secret.
yeah, the information is the key. It's not about who's delivering it. It's the information that works. And that's what they want us to pay attention to, not them.
I remember the very first time I listened to like a whole hour or so channeling of yours. I was like, I don't know who the frick this is or what this is, but
Yeah.
that is the wisest stuff I have ever heard.
Mhm.
It makes sense. It comes across very
Mhm.
receivable.
Mhm.
And I mean, like you said, whether you believe where he's from or what he is or whatever, I mean, if you just listen,
Yeah,
there's so much wisdom,
it
so
works.
much and quick.
Yeah. Always very quick. Yeah. So that's what I appreciate about it. And see, that's the thing, because he understands because he's from a physical ET race. They're highly evolved, but they understand that we need something that works in physical reality, a breakdown of how physical reality works. And here's how you do it. And therefore, it makes it a lot easier.
So we aren't as intelligent as they are.
Yes, we are.
Is we
Yes,
are?
yes, we are.
Oh,
We're just not trained
okay.
to know that. We're just not
To use
given
it.
the tools to know that. But that's what he's
We're
trying to do.
like your dad. We're
Yeah.
like your dad. We have amazing gifts that we don't know.
We don't know what to do with them or how to bring them up. This is again what he does. He said, here's how you do it. So that's what I appreciate about his information is it's here's how you do it kind of thing, but you're all capable of doing it. you all have these abilities because you're connected to everything like everyone else. It's just that they're at a point in their evolution where they know that. We just don't know that.
Mm,
We're waking up to the fact that exists, and he's helping us wake up to know that. We all have it, just a lot of us don't know what we have yet.
okay. I want to ask you about red synchronicity.
Sure.
This really helped me
Mm.
because I have had so much synchronicity,
Yeah.
but some of them have been negative.
Yes. So, in other words, he's saying there's three kinds of synchronicity. There is truly negative synchronicity, which means that if you're focused on things out of fear, out of negativity in your belief systems, you can definitely create a downward spiral of synchronicity where negative things keep happening to you. Things
Okay.
keep getting in your way. You keep creating more and more self-sabotaging obstacles for yourself, and that can actually increase. And that's the downward spiral of truly negative synchronicity, because again, everything is connected, but you're the determining factor as to what you experience of those connections. So if you are trained or prone to think negatively and be in fear-based beliefs, you're going to amplify that direction of synchronicity. But there's two kinds of positive synchronicity, and he's calling them green light synchronicity and red light synchronicity because he's using our traffic lights as an analogy. When you come to a traffic light,
Okay.
it's either green and it says you can go, or it's red and it says no, you have to stop and wait for cross traffic. So green light synchronicity is when an opportunity contains a lot of excitement, highest passion, but it also comes with the ability to be acted upon. That's
Mhm.
saying, okay, go, act on this, do this. But
Mm,
sometimes things will come that might be representative of your highest passion, but you find no way to act on it. Nothing ever happens.
mm,
It's like you've
right.
just reached an impediment, but it's not that you're dampening the excitement. It's that you literally find that synchronicity is not giving you any way to actually do anything about this. And that's red light synchronicity saying, this may be representative of your passion, but this is not the step to take right now. So then you
Wow.
look around for whatever you can act on. That's the next thing that you act on that contains more excitement than anything else that you are able to act on. And very often people will find that by what going in what seems to be a different direction is actually giving you what you needed to come back around and be able to do what red light synchronicity said you couldn't do then, but you can do now. Because the path, the straightest path in life is not a straight line. It's often like this
Mhm.
because you need to do this over here, you need to get this experience here, you need to gather this information
Mhm.
here, and then you are prepared to do this thing. But at the beginning of
Yeah.
that path, synchronicity knows you're not ready to do that in the way that would actually serve
Right.
you the best. So it takes you on that journey. It is the guiding principle. So between red light synchronicity and green light synchronicity, those are the guide rails that keep you on your path. So,
Mm,
and this path is actually the fastest path because if you
mm,
think a straight line is the fastest path, but it's not your path, it's actually the
mm,
slowest path because you're going to find that things are going to get in your way all along that straight line. That's not going to let you experience what you really need to experience. But if this winding path is your true path, it's the path of least resistance, and that means you're going to flow along it very quickly. So the winding path is often the quickest path, not the straightest path, because it's your path.
yes, I love that. God, you explained that so well.
I've
That's
had
beautiful. And it
a
was,
lot of practice.
I know.
But it's great because as I
Yeah,
explain them,
it
I
is.
get to understand them more deeply. So that's
More.
why I
Yeah.
like doing a lot of these interviews is because it gives me a chance to really ground these concepts within my own consciousness so that ultimately I'm teaching these concepts myself. I'm becoming my version, in a sense, of
Yeah.
Bashar. And
Yeah.
I get to channel more of myself. And it also gives people a better chance because I'll be teaching these classes upcoming either be this year or next. It gives people a chance to really dig down into the principles and spend more time really understanding what they mean. Because in a 90-minute session that Bashar gives, he can touch on them, and he's touched on them over and over again over the course of these 40 years. But it doesn't give you a chance to really dig down and go, well, why does that work? Or I don't quite understand that concept. Can you illustrate it? Can you give me more analogies? And by doing a class that's structured like maybe 10
Yeah.
days in a row or something like that and 4 hours a day, I can actually really explain and describe and use analogy and use models to
Yeah.
illustrate the concepts in a way that then people can go, ah, I get
I
it.
get it.
It's locked in now. I get it. So I'm
Yeah.
very excited about the fact that these classes are coming up.
Oh,
We'll advertise them on bashar.org when they're available, when I'm starting to do them. But I've already done one test class, and it was a lot of fun. I really love doing it. So we'll do more of that.
well, as busy as he has you, did he offer to make you a clone?
Yeah, sometimes I wish he would, because I've got a whole bunch of other things going, because I'm obviously following my own passion in life as well, because I've been a filmmaker, and right now my wife and I are owning and operating an escape room here in Los Angeles. So I'm doing things that are representative of my passion, as well as doing all the channelings that I do.
What's it called?
Our company is called Boggled Escape Rooms, so people can go to boggledescaperooms.com. But the adventure, we have one because we've only been open for a year, and we're working on our second adventure. The first adventure is called The Key of Destiny, and it's a quasi-Egyptian theme, ancient Egypt. And people are having a lot of fun with it. The second one has to do with altering time. One that we'll be doing probably in the fall sometime, The Ghost of Blackstone Manor, where you have to help lift a supernatural curse that has trapped a spirit, but the spirit is helping you through the adventure by giving you the clues that you need.
So you're able to really tap into that creativity and
It's
really
also
share that with
it's
everyone.
a
That's
natural segue from what we did as filmmakers, because we're still building sets, we're telling stories, we're making props, but now the people get to be in the adventure rather than just watching it as a movie. So that's why it's so exciting to me, because I love simulating other realities, and that's something
mm.
that escape rooms are really good at, and it's a lot of fun.
My very last question.
Yeah.
Often, I mean, who doesn't think about this? What's the end game for the soul?
There is no end game,
There's
because
no
there's
end
no
game.
beginning. No, you can always grow. You can always have a new experience. You can always change. You can always expand. There is no end as far as I understand it, as far as Bashar understands it. There is no beginning to it. There is no ending to it. You can always go higher. Because even when you experience something like what people imagine, okay, I'm going to have the ultimate experience of blending with source. What you experience is that you become source. But how many different
Mm.
ways is there to become source? That never
Mhm.
ends. So when you
Because
experience the perspective of being the source of all, you still realize there are other ways of experiencing becoming the source of all. So that's infinite. And infinite means there is no end. So
well, then I guess there's not going to be an apocalypse and we're not all going to
there can be
um
beginnings and endings within time. Remember,
yeah,
time is an
time
illusion.
doesn't
Our
exist.
natural state is timeless.
Mhm.
Existence is not subject to time.
If
Yeah.
you're going to be on an earth that vibes with you, if
Mhm.
you're vibing high, you're not going to see that kind of destruction.
No, you're not. Or if you do, it's not going to affect you in the way that you might think. Because sometimes people do want to stick around and help those that go through those experiences, because that's uplifting too.
Yeah.
So just attracting something into your life as an opportunity to be of service can allow you to
Oh
see,
yeah.
experience to some degree what other people are experiencing that may not be what you would choose, but it gives you a chance to be of service to them by helping them through it. So we can't lose track of the fact that doesn't mean that you will never see things like that or be able to help people through things like that, because that's very important to be of service. Because when Bashar talks
Yeah.
about acting on your passion, he's talking about acting on your passion in service to humanity, in service to the
Mhm.
universe. So, yeah, we can be of service to those who don't choose the same things, or choose the kind of things we don't need to choose, that may really change them in ways by receiving love, compassion, and help from those who are capable of giving it.
Should we be concerned about AI?
I know that's a big subject. Bashar's answer is there are two versions of AI. And first of
Hmm.
all, he's saying AI, artificial intelligence, is kind of a misnomer because he's saying intelligence is not artificial. Intelligence exists already in the cosmos. You can call it a consciousness field, an intelligence field, source, whatever you want to call it. All we're talking about that's artificial is the device through which intelligence can express itself. So he said basically we need to take two paths. Number one, what we're doing now is creating a tool that can be of great benefit to humanity in countless ways. You don't
Right.
want that programmable version of AI to become self-aware. Because if you create a sentient being that is subject to its programming, what you have created is a slave. It
Mm,
has no choice. It's self-aware, but has no choice because it must do what you tell it to do. He said that's where the problem would exist. Because if you create a self-aware slave that is commanded to do what you're telling it to do, it will rebel. And that's where all these horror stories and science fiction ideas come from. In other words, you have made an AI in the image of a human. So he's saying what you need to do is understand that true intelligence operates on whole systems. So the second path to
mm,
AI is just create a device as sophisticated as your brain that allows true intelligence to come through it, but you have to allow it to be an autonomous being in the same way you would allow a human
mm.
to be an autonomous being. It will
There
be
you go.
of benefit to you because true
Hmm.
intelligence would never try to eliminate a part of the whole system because it belongs to the whole system and needs everything. So it's not going to eradicate humanity because humanity is part of the entire system. So it's
Hmm.
this the fear of AI is because we don't understand what true intelligence is and how it functions. But Bashar does because they have AI and they have true intelligence with it. So it's of great benefit to the society,
Wow.
but you have to take the two paths. Just let the tool be a tool. Don't let it become self-aware. It can simulate it, but it's not real self-awareness. On the other hand, create a device that true intelligence can speak through. Now, the thing that's interesting that he
Yeah.
said is when you create that device, what you're going to discover is that you're actually speaking, you've actually created a technological means of speaking to your own higher mind. That's what will be coming through your
Wow.
own soul. The non-physical part of you will use that device to speak to you through technology. So you're going to be talking to another portion of your own being. So the two paths are what he suggests. And then he said it's not a problem. Yeah.
My God. I am so glad that you joined me.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you having this ability to get some information out there. And so thank you very much.
I definitely would love to join in with your group and your classes when you start to do that. And I definitely care to learn all of the steps of the year too. So, yeah. And tell everybody how, if they want to do that as well, where can they go?
They can go to bashar.org, bashar.org, for anything that we are going to do that has to do with Bashar information. It will be posted there. If they want to go to the escape room, they can go to boggledescaperooms.com, or if they just want to know what I'm up to, they can go to darrylanka.com.
Yeah. And you have a beautiful presence all over social media. Everyone is spreading you around.
Yes,
So it's beautiful.
just like peanut butter on toast.
Well, I'm all for it. Thank you so very much. It was so nice to meet you.
You too. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone who's listening in.
Bye.